What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. You already know it is the 904 Strength Club, home of the strongest content coming out of Northeast Florida. 2023 is wild. I've got 3 different stories to cover today. I have reshot this video it's 2 times now. This is my 3rd go on this video because every time that I get through with doing one of the videos and I don't post it right away, a new story comes out that's exactly related to the same story. We're going to cover 3 stories. I'm going to try to make quick work of the stories, and then we're going to have a little discussion. And it's not really a discussion, it's you listening to me bloviate and pontificate or whatever it is that you want to call it. So, first story, and this is from NPR News. A huge win. Minnesota judge rules USA powerlifting can't bar trans athletes. For context, USAPL came out a little while back. If you're not familiar, USAPL is the big tested federation. They're a big deal. They came out and they said they would not allow trans women to compete in the women's division. They didn't say trans women couldn't compete. They just said that they would not compare their lifts to biological women, cisgendered women. I'll use the proper terminology. Okay, a Ramey County District Court judge has ruled that USAPL illegally discriminated against a transgender woman who was barred from participating in women's powerlifting competitions. In Judge Patrick Diamond's decision released Monday night, he ordered USAPL to immediately stop discriminating according to sexual identity and to revise their policies within 2 weeks. In 2018, J.C. Cooper's request to compete in women's powerlifting was denied by USAPL officials. She was told by the organization's medical director that male to female transgenders are not allowed to compete as females in our static strength sport, as it is a direct competitive advantage. After the ruling, Cooper said she was denied access to competitions by USAPL after clearing every hurdle asked of her. Trans athletes across the country deserve the same rights and protections as everyone else, and we deserve equitable opportunities to compete in the sports we love, Cooper said in a statement. I am thrilled that this ruling recognizes our rights and our humanity and hopefully opens doors for transgender athletes everywhere to participate fully in sports. USAPL argued that they banned transgender women from participating due to fairness. The organization's website outlines their policies on transgender athletes, saying that where they say USAPL is not a fit for every athlete and for every medical condition or situation. That's true. I can't compete in USAPL. It's voluntary. The organization argues that they believe transgender women have developmental advantages, including but not limited to increased body and muscle mass, bone density, bone structure, and connective tissue. So this is a 5-year-old case that just got resolved earlier on. I think at the end of February was when this ruling came out. Fast forward a couple weeks. World Athletics, the governing body internationally over track and field events, revised their transgender policy. Now, what they did is very interesting because one of the complaints has been about this just being testosterone. And it's not just about testosterone. Okay, testosterone is a very key component. And if you don't believe testosterone is performance enhancing, then take it off the banned list. Alright? There's a reason that it's on every doping list in the world. So what they did was they recognized transgender athletes and DSD athletes. And they recognized that there is a distinction there. DSD is different sexual development. And what that is dealing with is females, cisgendered females, that through a congenital defect, if you want to call it that, their bodies produce a higher level of testosterone. Alright? So, from the World Athletics website, for DSD athletes, the new regulations will require any relevant athletes to reduce their testosterone levels below a limit of 2.5 nanomoles per liter for a minimum of 24 months to compete internationally in the female category in any event, not just the events that were restricted 400 meter to 1 mile under the previous regulations. The principle of restricted events has been removed from the regulations. If they're already competing, they just got to get down there for 6 months, which is what they were having to do before, but they were allowed to be at 5 nanomoles per liter. For comparison, the reference range for female testosterone, the upper end of it is 2.4 nanomoles per liter. The lower end of the male reference range is 10. The upper end of the male is around 36, if I remember right. Just putting that data out there. In regard to transgender athletes, the council has agreed to exclude male to female transgender athletes who have been through male puberty from female world ranking competitions. Starting 31st of March, they did a big consultation period with member federations, Global Athletics Coaches Academy and Athletes Commission, the IOC, as well as representative transgender and human rights groups. It became apparent that there was little support within the sport for the option that was first presented to stakeholders, which required transgender athletes to maintain their testosterone levels below 2.5 nanomoles per liter for 24 months to be eligible to compete internationally in the female category. So initially they were going to offer them the same option that they offer DSD athletes, not make a distinction. The problem is that it's not just the testosterone. It is the biological male body, the connective tissue, the lung capacity, red blood cell count, all sorts of other things which are elevated and give biological males, so we'll say cisgendered male and transgender females, a legitimate advantage athletically. Very interesting statement here. In these circumstances, the council decided to prioritize fairness and the integrity of the female competition before inclusion. I think that encapsulates the decision. So, let's pause for a minute and talk about these two. The USAPL case. That judge prioritized inclusion over the integrity of the sport. That's not a judgment. That's a statement of fact. That judge basically made it to where somebody who does have physical advantages is able to compete. Now, does that mean that every trans woman is going to win every competition? No, it does not mean that. What it does mean is that within the trans women population, they will possess an unfair advantage. They will be statistically overrepresented in the upper tier of athletes if they're allowed to compete as females. But wait, there's more. So, this is from the New York Post. This is something. Male powerlifter enters women's event, breaks records. Did they just miss? Nope. A bearded pro powerlifter entered a women's competition in Canada and smashed a record held by a trans lifter who was watching. Avi Silverberg, the head coach for Team Canada Powerlifting for more than 10 years, entered Saturday's Heroes Classic tournament in Alberta, identifying as a female. Video shared by the athlete activist group, the Independent Council on Women's Sports, showed him walking up to the platform still fully bearded and wearing a regular men's singlet. He looked kind of like a Chad meme. Just saying. It's not throwing shade. He then casually bench pressed nearly 370 pounds, beating the current Alberta women's record by almost 100 pounds. That record, 275 pounds, was held by trans athlete Ann Andreas, who was seen watching Silverberg while volunteering at the event. Andreas also holds the Alberta women's record for the deadlift at 544 pounds, giving her the local record for the combined total of all three lifts of 1,245 pounds. Hold on. So 275 and 544, that's what, 820 ish? So 425 squat roughly. The trans lifter won 8 out of 9 competition entered in women's category over the last 4 years, Icon said. As Silverberg broke her record, Andrea stood off to the edge of the platform area, only strolling back on after the male lifter walked off. Icon said Silverberg mocked the discriminatory policy that allows competitors to register for events under their gender identity and expression rather than their sex or gender, vowing no consequences for doing so. CPU's trans policy states that an individual should be able to participate in the gender with which they identify and not be subject to requirements for disclosure of personal information beyond those required of cisgender athletes. It also states, nor should there be any requirements for hormonal therapy or surgery. Now, let's stop for a minute. Okay, this was obviously a stunt to mock the policy. But let's say that you are a transgender female and you show up with your government ID that says female. Even if they say trans females can't compete, who's gonna check? Who? Let's continue. However, the union's competition registration policy states that a competitor's government-issued photo ID must be verified during the weigh-in or equipment check, including date of birth, province, and gender at all competitions. It is unclear if Silverberg presented a government-issued ID identifying him as a female or was required to. Did they just misgender Avi? Repeated messages left for the CPU's board of directors and executive staff were not returned Thursday. Silverberg is among those executive members listed on the CPU's website as the vice president in Alberta. He did not immediately agree to request to be interviewed. He's not making a big deal out of it yet. I don't know if he will. Breaking the record by 100 pounds is kind of making a big deal out of it, but either way, according to Icons, what Avi so obviously points out is that the policies allowing men access to women's sports completely remove any integrity in women's competitions. There's one of our words again, integrity. It doesn't matter how Avi expresses himself or perceives himself, he clearly does not belong in women's sport, and neither does any other male, regardless of their motivation for wanting to participate. Silverberg, who is also an online coach and powerlifting columnist, has not directly addressed the competition. However, Andreas posted a series of lengthy video responses calling him a coward and a bigot with malicious intent. Yeah. Still, in one clip, she openly admits that maybe my participation isn't necessarily fair, There's science, whatever. Trust the science. In another follow-up, she said that it was not her problem, however, because she transitioned almost 20 years ago. I got surgery. I can prove without any doubt whatsoever that I've gone through every step, which means whatever governing body decides to make decisions, I will pass that test. Once again, what's going to be the test? And those poor judges. I actually care about women in sport because I am a woman in sport, she wrote alongside one video. Bodybuilding influencer Greg Doucette, shout out Coach Greg, was among those highlighting the episode, noting how ludicrous it was for a man not to so easily compete in a supposed drug-free event despite way higher testosterone. Yeah. I think this proves the point. If a guy can just show up and then set the record, doesn't that prove that it's not fair? So, how long before the powers that be suddenly wake up, smell the coffee, and understand that if you're born a female, you're not going to be as powerful, as strong as if you were born a male? I'm stating facts to set of the unfair advantage, comparing it to the advantage of a woman who would have it, comparing it to the advantage a woman would have if she entered a drag queen show against men. To me, the answer is simple. We had a separate category, a new category, the trans category, he said, saying it is especially important for combat sports where women competitors could get injured. I don't know if Coach Greg remembers Fallon Fox, but that's exactly what happened. Fallon Fox was a male to female trans MMA fighter and was not particularly good, but one of the fighters that she fought said she had never been hit that hard in her life. And she'd been competing in MMA for a little while at that point. So, I don't want to exclude anybody from sport. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think the answer is saying you can't be here. All right? I will personally tell you over and over again how good competition is for you. How having the discipline to train for a competition, to go out there, to try to be the best you that you can be, and to work towards that, to work towards those goals, will have carryover into every area of your life. The more discipline that you learn in the gym, the more discipline you can enact. You can embrace the suck. You can do the things that you have to do that are unpleasant so that you can get further than you would have ever gotten. And for a lot of people, competition is a big motivator behind that, because you want to show up and you want to win. Now, imagine how that alienates women that have that drive, who show up and are going to have to compete against a trans woman, knowing that they are disadvantaged, especially in a drug-tested federation. Play a little looser in the non-drug tested federations, but still, in a non-drug tested federation, here's the issue. Drugs are not going to overcome genetics. Drugs are not going to overcome muscle insertions. Drugs are not going to overcome bone density. Drugs are not going to overcome all of this. They're going to enhance what you have. They're not going to overcome. People think drugs do way too much. So, I very much am in the camp of letting trans athletes compete, but I think that they need to be competing in a way which does not disadvantage the other athletes. You cannot maintain the integrity of the sport and give them access to the women's class if it's about competing and it's not about winning and getting a trophy. Then you wouldn't mind competing against men. All right? If it's about competing and it's not about winning a trophy and making a big show, then you wouldn't mind competing in a trans category. Now, I also understand that this is a subject that is very near and dear to people. And in no way am I, in this video, trying to make a morality ruling. But with regard to sport, when you put inclusiveness on one side of the scale and you put integrity of the sport on the other, I will be on the integrity of the sport side every single time. That's just how I'm built. I will be the person that says we don't beat tests. If you have to beat a test, then you shouldn't be competing in that federation. I will not compete in USAPL. I can't compete, nor do I want to. Not because I just go in and beat everyone, but because I know right off the rip I have an unfair advantage. Shame on anybody that wants to go into competition that's a hobbyist sport with that kind of advantage. It's one thing for gamesmanship and trying to get in their head and mess with people and all that, and that's all part of the game. But when you have an obvious biological advantage that cannot be overcome, I'm sorry, I'm not with you on this one. So, until next time, hopefully another video doesn't, or another story doesn't drop before I get this uploaded. We'll see you later.